Welcome to RSAC Conference 2025. We're here recording from the Cyber Risk TV studio at the Marriott Marquis in San Francisco. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me for this interview is Stephen Driggers, Chief Revenue Officer at TXOne Networks. Congrats to TXOne for being nominated as a Best Endpoint Security Solution finalist in the 2025 SC Awards.
No, thanks very much. Yeah, it was quite the honor and super excited to be here.
Yeah, excited to have this conversation as I'm not super familiar with TXOne.
Yeah.
I love learning about new companies, new products, and very eager to hear more about what you guys do. So Endpoint Security is what it says here. When I was a 451 analyst, 451 research, I covered that space very closely. And during that whole period where all the leaders were changing up, right? If you remember Cylance, CrowdStrike, and SentinelOne, and McAfee and Symantec, and
Sure.
And it was a crazy time. Yeah. So help me understand where you play in the endpoint space, where you fit in.
Sure. No, thanks for that. Specifically, we're primarily focused on the OT side of the networks for the endpoint
Operational
solution.
technology.
Operational technology, absolutely. So in many cases, we're deployed at the shop floors where the OT devices are currently found, not only in manufacturing facilities, but industrial control systems, utilities, oil and gas, even transportation, trains and airports and different things. And so we've developed that endpoint solution specifically with OT in mind. Not only the protocols there, but what OT applications do we need to be aware of to be able to provide, adequate protection in the OT environment.
Yeah, I remember I was talking to somebody a few weeks ago, and they were excited that one of their critical software providers just certified Windows 7 for their software. So is that common in your world?
It's extremely common, and in many cases, once they've built these manufacturing facilities or sites, for example, if it's working and it's producing what they need to produce, they don't do a lot of upgrades.
Yeah.
And so as a result, the longer those older OSs are in play, the more vulnerable they are to different attacks and the like. And so a big differentiator for us is to support not only the newer OSs that are being deployed in brand new facilities, but a lot of that older OS stuff for sure. And it requires a lot of R&D work to make sure we maintain that. But we find in some cases some of our customers will say, I've deployed an IT type of an endpoint solution on these devices, and the manufacturer has told me they're no longer supporting Windows 7 or 8 or whatever the version is, and they'll continue to support them and allow them to buy maintenance support on it, but there's no new feature development there. Mm-hmm. So we can, in many cases, go in behind that and say, great, we support that, and they'll do a refresh on that basis alone, operating system support.
So that world, I do get the impression that it's overly Windows focused. Your product, is it mostly Windows?
It's primarily Windows today. We're in development for Linux, where we have some newer OSs and then deployments that some of our current customers are saying, hey, we've got a new plant over here in this location. Can you support Linux? And that's in development, which should be ready at the end of this year.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
And give me some idea of the feature set for this product. What kind of features, functionality for securing these devices are you providing, and do you have to provide a slightly different feature set for older operating systems?
Somewhat. The other great thing about our solution is because we were designed with the OT environments in mind, we were very aware of over 40,000 OT type applications. So we're aware of what that looks like. Whereas a normal, IT endpoint solution, that's not something that they wake up and think about every day.
Well, it would be impossible. Right?
It would be difficult.
The numbers get crazy.
For sure. And so, because of that, we start there with broad, OT protocol and application support. And in many cases, it's not on every single situation, but in many cases, our endpoint software can be deployed without having to reboot that device.
Oh, nice.
And so when that's
a plus.
when that's the case, that means zero disruption to the operation, which is absolutely one
Music
of our
to their ears.
yeah. They want to hear that as much as possible. And so so I would say that's a big differentiator there. Also, we can sit on top of that device and then learn the traffic of who it's talking to and know when to alert and when to separate the false positive noise. If it's not relevant, we're not going to trigger a bunch of alerts on traffic that's not relevant for that device.
And the, so some of the services here, I would imagine some kind of anti-malware function.
Right.
You're talking about alerting on network traffic.
Yes.
Those are the like a host IPS function here as well.
There is a host IPS, and you can go as granular as you want. Do you want to do a light scan? Do you want to do a deep packet level scan? We can do both. And then we operate well with our other products in our portfolio, which are an edge IPS, which is a network device.
Oh, okay.
And we can also talk and share information to those devices as well. So when that's there you're talking a defense in depth scenario. If you're protecting on the edge of that network plus at the endpoint as well, it's obviously much more robust.
Yeah, it makes sense having networks in the name. Yeah.
That's right. That's it.
And the solution, I imagine, maybe not a SaaS solution. A lot of these environments are going to be maybe isolated.
Very much.
So how do you manage this stuff?
That's a great point. And in many cases, that's another big differentiator because most of these OT endpoint devices don't have internet access, and they're definitely locked down. And so it does require, to push out scripts to be able to deploy to all of these devices, but you also don't run the risk of having unscheduled updates that maybe get pushed out by the endpoint vendors and cause disruption in that way. So, it generally will take less than 5 minutes per endpoint device to load the software on, but you're right. It does need to be pushed, from the server on the network to be able to have access to it to get it deployed.
And I imagine with these being long-lived devices, older devices, you also have to be very sensitive to the performance characteristics of your software.
Yeah.
You have to deal with maybe not as much RAM as your developers would like you to have. Maybe a single CPU core, maybe two CPU cores if you're lucky.
Absolutely. And in many cases, you're absolutely right. Those devices don't have that processing power. And the processing power that they do have, they want to, focus that
Dedicate
on
to its main job.
Absolutely, to do the operation job. So, so we make sure that we're not taking, sucking up resources off of that CPU. And again, because of the learning that we do about the device itself and who it talks to, we know when we need to, take an action of protection and blocking something or just alerting on it, depending on what the configuration might be.
Yeah, and it's interesting conversation here because I have a podcast. I do a lot of work with Cyber Risk Alliance, talking to new startups, new space, talk a lot about new technology. But the other half of my time I spend advising enterprises, talking to them about the actual problems they're having.
Sure.
Yeah, as opposed to the solutions that are being sold to them. And oftentimes it is kind of night and day. It's not uncommon. I'd say probably once a month I talk to an electric utility. It's been around for 80 years. They just ran their first vulnerability scan ever, and it came back with 1 million results, and they're freaking out. And this is a great reminder that in the real world, and not everybody is fully in the cloud using 100% SaaS. Like there still is a lot of this stuff out there that needs to be secured. It's being targeted.
And it's absolutely starting to be targeted. We've seen that since Stuxnet basically first reared its head. We saw that people were like, oh my gosh, yeah, what about these OT environments? They're extremely, that attack surface is massive. And definitely vulnerable. And whether you're producing something as a manufacturer or if you're trying to keep the lights on or the water flowing, you want to make sure that you can protect those devices as well.
Well, Excellent conversation.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for joining me today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Learned a lot about TXOne and what you're doing. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Also, congrats again for being nominated as a Best Endpoint Security Solution finalist in the 2025 SC Awards.
Thank you. Very proud of that. Thanks.